How's it going, everybody? This is Mark Stokes here.
And this is Dean Scurry.
And I am a traveller.
And I am a countryman.
Welcome to A Traveller
and a Countryman podcast. What's your name?
What's my name? Richie Smyth. I come from a generation where, and I practice this on my younger nephew and niece, and it doesn't go down as, like, you know, that whole Irish humour of, like, just to say the most outrageous thing you can come into your head, just to see what kind of a reaction it get. You don't even mean it. You just want to put it together and say something outrageous just to see. Maybe to poke at people, to get people, to stimulate people to engage at a different level, you know. Come on, let's do this. You know, it's like if you want to fight with somebody.
Yeah, because sometimes you're at this level here and it gets a bit stale or mundane or boring or samey. Because I do that all the time, what you're talking about, like, just throw something in, throw the cat amongst the pigeons for the crack.
I see you do it with, like, just anytime we're chatting, if like a waiter or waitress comes along, what's your name? And that every time he does it, it always throws people. They always go, no one does that normally. So, and you don't do it in a flirtatious way. You do it in
I'm not looking
I'm
to
interested.
flirt. Probably years ago I was looking to flirt. Yeah, and I think you flirt out of, you know, necessity or insecurity or whatever. But this one is about, I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated there's a person in front of me. Doesn't matter what they're doing, especially if they're doing a service where they're, you know, bringing me something. That fucking blows my mind. Who the fuck am I to be sitting down somewhere and have somebody else's job is to bring me something that I just ordered? That relationship is really, really interesting. Someone actually told me once, the people who get the most physical contact in their job are people like waiters. I'm not at that level. I'm just asking them their name.
Yeah, but you're coming at it from a slightly different angle than the norm. In that moment, you know, it's like I saw it the other day. You asked a waitress their name, and she told you her name, and she walked away. But I could see her big smile on her face, and it wasn't like she fancied you or it was a flirtation. It was just, I didn't see that coming. You know, I find, like, when I first started doing Kempo and I was fighting, the sparring, because it was all mates and we'd be sparring. I used to love that interaction with a mate on that level. You know, hitting one another, sparring, tackling one another, challenging one another physically, but we're still mates. Yeah. So we'd both end up lying on the ground exhausted at the end of it, but very satisfied.
It's intimate, but not sexual.
Definitely not sexual at that point.
So I done jiu-jitsu for the same kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Because it's very intimate. You've got somebody's weight on you.
Yeah.
You've got your body and their body and moving. We're at episode 13, our latest episode, and we've invited Richie Smyth. His accolades are many. I got to know him recently with Martin because we were invited to get involved in the Irish Census promotion video, which Richie was asked to
direct.
So you direct and produce and write. This is like your creative stuff. This is the stuff you might be known for in the public eye. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things, but in different areas of the business, or the media business, I guess, or the entertainment industry. So, like, I'm a director. That's what I've always been. I produce stuff, but the word producer is an umbrella over a lot of sort of roles. In a movie, the main producer is the guy, boots on the ground, raises the money, has to deliver the movie, watches everybody, even pretty much controls the director to a point, right? Then there's other producers within that. Some of those producers might just, like, make a phone call to Daniel Day-Lewis, and Daniel Day-Lewis said he'll read the script. That's producing, right? If he does the movie, so they get a credit. Then there's producers who, like, find the story of Martin and Dino's podcast.
Yeah.
And
a Traveller and a Countryman.
Traveller and a Countryman.
The documentary or the film of that.
Or the film of that. And that's what I call developing producing, which is where you're developing an idea. And then at a certain point, I would do some of that. I would option books. I would find stories. But I need, at a certain point, when it's ripe and it's ready to be made or financed, I need what I call the real producer to come along then and actually take the project and help me make it. So then we become like a team, the director and the producer.
Yeah, because I've done loads of that you're talking about, and people would call me, oh, he's a fixer, but I try and get in the credits as coordinator or co-producer or something like that. You know, for films I've worked on, for music videos I've done, for documentaries.
Yeah. So are we actually recording now, Dean? Yeah.
So we're actually recording now. We're in the middle of it. We kind of had a soft start, which was nice. Sometimes we start off these things going, boom, episode 13, we're here, Traveller on the Countryman podcast. But the energy was in the room to just ease in.
Yeah.
Ease on down the road.
As I said, I'm a fan of 13, you know.
Yeah.
Like
What do you mean you're a fan of 13?
I just like... Friday the 13th has always been very lucky for me,
Okay.
which is weird because it's such a superstition that's the other way.
Right.
And anytime there's a Friday the 13th, I always cock my eye and go, okay, what's coming at me today? That'll be interesting. It's how it is. It's
For me, it's full moon. Well, lately, in the last couple of years, it's full moon.
Yeah.
Because I remember years ago, full moon was like something scary is going to happen. But for me, it's something amazing is coming up.
Yeah.
There's an energy. There's an energy off that, you know.
Martin, travelers I always assumed that travelers were quite superstitious.
Yeah.
How was Friday the 13th for you?
Very suspicious about. I wouldn't be now. Genuinely, I'm not suspicious about Friday the 13th. I know a lot of people who are very suspicious about Friday the 13th. Like I fear that something's going to happen to them, or maybe their families, or something like that. There, for one reason or another.
Yeah.
But I just bless my face and thank God for every day and get on with it. That's the way I'm not genuinely don't fear at all about Friday the 13th. I don't have that suspicion about it or
The number 13?
superstition. Number 13, no.
No.
No, the Friday the 13th, yeah, like you said, it's supposed to be one of these days where people are sort of scared of it and fear of it and superstitious about it. Not knowing what's going to happen through the day, but sure, no one knows what's going to happen through the day anyway. But no, I've never been superstitious about. As I said, I know people that do. I've been around people that are suspicious in lots of different ways. But for myself, no.
But I mean, I don't have a massive experience of relationships with travelers. I have some traveler friends over the years that I made, right? But I wouldn't have really put you down as your typical traveler.
No.
There's something a bit more open-minded or broader visions.
Yeah.
That's what I take from
Probably.
our relationship so far.
Chatting to you, yes. I don't know. As I said earlier on, in the superstition side of it, like there's lots of different types of superstitions. You have that one which Dean brought up there last week with about Shawnee was saying about the magpies. Is that right?
1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for the girl, 4 for the boy. One of our guests, Sean Kinsley, he was on and he was saying when he was a kid, he used to have loads of them. The magpie was one, and if you seen one magpie and then he didn't see another one, he couldn't sleep. He had another one where he used to touch the H on a wall where the hydrant or the hose was. And I'm fascinated by where do we get them, and why do we hold on to certain ones and other ones drift off? You know, I find that really interesting. And I was kind of linking it when we were talking to Shawnee about beliefs and faiths and superstitions and myths and stories. And you're in the myth story film industry. That's your career. That's where you make your bread and butter. You know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, mostly the direction I've taken in storytelling so far has been true stories and true untold stories. I haven't ventured into that sort of mythology and superstitions and vampires, and I do really like them. You know, my email address is Zombie Brain, so you know it's the clues in the word, and I do love vampire movies actually a lot, and every so often there'll be a new take on the vampire genre that's just epic. You know, it's like when Blade came out, it was like no one thought about that as a version of a vampire movie, and so it's in my brain to sort of like to make a vampire movie. You know, within my career, that's one of the genres I'd love to do.
Where did Zombie Brain come from?
Just like zombie movies, and right back in the day when email started.
Yeah.
Really far back. Like it was a free for all, and they weren't all used up. All these things. If you try and do anything with Zombie Brain now, you'll get.
My one is white browser because I have a white eyebrow.
That's right, you do. Yeah.
Where
does that come from? Is that from shock or something?
Some shock. Yeah, it's kind of like stress shock. I was doing exams when I was about 20. Really kind of high end technical networking, computer networking exams, and I just got stressed out. And I used to go and see this fella and get a bit of counselling off him. And over the weeks when I was going, I was starting to reveal more stuff to him, fears and insecurities and all this. And the white eyebrow just started to appear. So I feel like it's like, you know, a native American Indian kind of vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or when you get people, you ever see people, somebody died in the family and you get a streak of grey hair.
There was a really brilliant copywriter, and he also was a co-owner of an advertising agency called Javelin, called Connor Kennedy. And Connor, when he was young, was in, I think, an accident, a car wreck or something. He the shock, he went grey. And he had a big mane of grey hair for his entire career. And he was quite a character and so well read and just remarkable copywriter and writer. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But he had this big mane of grey hair from that, and a moustache actually as well.
No way.
Yeah. And he was known for it, around in the industry, in the advertising industry.
And a mate of mine happened the same. He's an artist named John Duffy from Ballymun, and he kind of had the same. Something happened to him when he was young, and the whole thing, boom, grey. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm white browser.
White browser.
All right, zombie brain. We'll have to get you one, Martin.
What is yours, man?
Well, a nickname, like, is it?
Yeah.
Flakes is Martin. My father's name was Flakes, so I'm known by everybody as Flakes is Martin.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I'm known now. By the way,
Tell Richie where your dad got flakes from.
he was off. Well, the story is that he was only a young lad, and he was sent to do some messages. Came back with the wrong messages, and he came back with a box of cornflakes on the back of his bike. So he had a lot of brothers.
Simple and
He had
genius.
11 brothers. Well, there's 11 of them all together. And whatever ones was around at the time, they start jeering off him, and then they put the name on him, Flakes.
Well, Flakes, he did well.
Well, it was cornflakes, but yeah, exactly. But they started calling him cornflakes, and then they narrowed it down to just Flakes. So he was known as Flakes then before he died. He was like 4 years dead. I rest him.
4.
So the name carried on. Flakes is Martin.
Yeah.
And then say my other brothers now, they'd be known as Flakes is Tom, Flakes is Bernie, and all it.
So you all got tired with it.
It's more as a family name now than anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We all got done for it.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Would you be known? That name would be known, outside of the family circle. Other people would know.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely everywhere. Sure, a lot of people are only known by their nicknames now. While in the travelling community, a lot of people. See, so many of the same names in the travelling community.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Martin, Michael, say Tom, John. They're the kind of names, along with others, that would be fairly popular names, if you know what I mean, in the travelling community. So if you said to me, do you know Tom Stokes? First thing I say to you, which Tom Stokes is that? Well, you might say, well, he's from such a part of England or Ireland or such a part of Ireland, whatever. Yeah, I think I know him. Does he have a nickname? Yeah, they call him such a thing. Of course I know him.
Yeah.
So you know them by the nicknames. Because there's so many, as I said in the travelling community, so many of the same name,
Right.
literally over and over and over. And it's only recently, like, say, the last, let's say, 15 years or so, maybe a little bit more, that travellers are using, let's say, different types of names, if you know what I mean. Names that you probably only hear in the settled community, like. All the young people now are calling their kids' names after these singers and actors.
Rihanna, Mercedes.
You name it. Every name they can think
Golda.
of. Every name they can think of now. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just in the travelling community. The settled kids are doing that as well. They've got names, Nintendo, Wii.
That's a great name.
Well, I've never heard that one out, Dean. But
the traditional names are gone. Like, I'm Dean William Daniel Scurry. And I remember William comes from my grandfather, but the Daniel part I picked out, and I was really proud of that. And I had to be like a saint or a religious kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I remember studying that when I was whatever age you are when you pick that name. And I wanted Daniel. It was nice.
Yeah, I think I'm the 5th Richard for 5 generations. And
Richard the Fifth?
Yeah, I'm Richard the 5th. Ga-ding! And I'm born on the 5th of May. So I'm a lot of 5s going on. And
very numeric.
And I'm very into numerology, and the I did this. When I was putting on an event in Los Angeles, and I needed these 2 guys to help me with it, and they were kind of techie guys, right? Like, and I know money. It was, so they said it'd help me with it, but they wanted to meet me first, right? And so I said okay. So I met them in Venice. There's quite a famous cafe called the Rose Cafe. there's a car park. So I met them like at 10 o'clock at night in the car park at the Rose Cafe, which was all a bit sort of feeling a bit nefarious, but I was, I was down with it. I'd called it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I get there, and it's an older guy and a younger guy, and they're a real team, and they have a big book with them, right? And they say to me, okay, what's the day and the month of your birth? And I was like, May 5th. And they went into the book. Oh, you're a ace of spades. Okay, you're good. We'll work with you. And that was it. They closed the book and we started.
These were American guys?
Yeah. But for example, they said to me, because I was like, "What? You need to explain a bit more to me than that." And they didn't really explain it terribly well. They were really hooked into numerology, and day and month sort of births, and what that represented in a person's personality. Okay, and so for example, they said to me, "You're good. You're strong. You're honest. You lead." Okay, and I was like, "So we're good. We can trust you. So we'll work with you." Okay, and I was a bit shocked because this is LA. It's usually a lot more superficial than that. And it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, these lads had something.
This was coming like this.
Something behind what, it wasn't just veneer. There was a bit of depth to them.
Yeah, and not something you expected to come out of them or out of that city, I suppose.
They grew up in a cult or something?
No, they were just into this shit. And so I said, look, you give me something else. They said, look, for example, if you had said to us you were born on the 31st of December, we would just walked away. and I was like, why? He says, well, you can't trust people who are born on the last day of the year. And I was like, okay. Now, I've looked into it a little bit, but not enough.
Was that a superstition of theirs?
Well, I think, Martin, the question is how much superstition is built into the whole notion of numerology, The thing I'm obsessed with, and I collect them on my phone mostly, is 1111s.
1111s or 444. Jay-Z's album 444. So there's a spiritual thing associated with 444, especially waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you have, some people have reported, like, if there's a death in the family or there's something big is going to happen in their life, they'll wake up at that time in the morning.
Yeah.
And it'll just appear on the clock.
Well, yeah, I think I might have been telling you when we were chatting that in 2019 I did a week of ayahuasca ceremonies in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of predominant sort of visions was code and numbers just rotating at crazy speeds. Quite matrixy, like, not like the Matrix that we, the movie show with all the green and stuff, but just there was a lot of numbers involved in what I could see in reality, which was interesting. So I've always kind of felt there's something about 1111. I always feel like if it comes up, like if I pop my phone now and it goes 1111, I go, oh, okay, that's good. I like that.
Something good going to happen to you, yeah?
Yeah, and so, I don't know what it is, but I feel it's a good thing.
So that's not just something you drop in. Well, it is now more and more. People go, I done a week of ayahuasca. What got you to there? That just doesn't happen.
It's.
But sorry, I'm just going to say, for those people who don't know what ayahuasca is, it's a tribal medicine from
Amazon.
The Amazon.
It's like an over 2,000-year-old plant-based medicine that the shamans, who are the spiritual sort of leaders of the medical spiritual leaders of the tribes of the Amazon, would have originated there and spread out into South America, to most countries in South America.
And in Ireland, a kind of reference that people might understand is similar to magic mushrooms.
My experience of the difference between magic mushrooms and ayahuasca is magic mushrooms, well, unlike LSD, which is kind of synthetic, magic mushrooms, when you take them, you feel like whatever is happening to you, it feels organic with reality and the earth. And, you sort of, like, that's why you could feel like you could communicate with a tree when you're tripping on magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
What I noticed on ayahuasca is that you in the ceremonies, you take the medicine, you lie down, you close your eyes, and you go into a whole world inside. But I kept sitting up. There's only maybe 5 or 6 people in this. It was a very small ceremonies. I kept sitting up and opening my eyes and checking on everybody because some people were very sick.
Yeah.
And it was just a natural response. I'd sit up, look around, and then when I was happy everybody was okay, I'd go back down into into my own visions. And but when I would open my eyes, it would be a dramatic shift in the visual, and what I would see with my eyes open was quite like what you see on magic mushrooms for me.
But when you open your eyes, the visuals are like magic mushrooms, and then you close them and go back in.
Yeah. So I found it easy to navigate it because I had that experience when I was younger.
So Martin, is any of this that he's talking about, ayahuasca or any of that, have you heard of any of that before?
Truth is, I haven't got a clue about it, to be honest.
Have you ever heard of magic mushrooms?
I've often heard of magic mushrooms. I've never delved into it, like, or even to say what are they or what are they used for, I don't know.
I find it really, really interesting, because I've talked to some traveller people about this stuff, but in general they were like, we haven't got a clue what you're talking about. And I would talk to my, as Martin calls us, settled friends or country friends, and this is the topic that we're all talking about, you know, going on spiritual journeys inside with some kind of medicine.
Right.
So I just find that space is really nice, because I can see Martin sitting here going, I haven't got a fucking clue what these lads are on about. Like,
well, when I was like 14, 15, 16, we didn't have any money, you know, so you had these mushrooms. The word was, you know, amongst everybody, you got these mushrooms. If you know what they look like, you pick them, you eat them, you get a whole, you go off on this mad trip, and it's like a free get out of your head for 12 hours.
Yeah.
So at that, in the circles I was in as kids, that was a very attractive offer. All you had to do was get your bus fare up to the mountain and you were good to go. And they were, by most parts, pretty amazing. But then sometimes they get quite dark as well, because you start to introvert. And it is quite strong, but they are of the earth. And if you pick them and you eat them, that's what happens. I mean, that's what berserkers are, isn't it? The Vikings took them.
oh, is it? I never heard that. Berserkers. What's that?
So could it be just as dangerous as anything else? It could.
Well, dangerous. The only way I've ever seen them be dangerous, apart from maybe somebody really losing, I mean, and I haven't actually seen this, but losing it and falling off a cliff or something crazy, you know.
This is what I was thinking. Like, at 12 years of age, going up in the mountains, picking mushrooms, and getting out, like, say, if I could use the word, getting out of your head with them, is it? And was there not a lot of danger involved there for a young 12-year-old? Like,
well, I wasn't 12, it was closer to 15, 16.
Yeah.
But that's a good jump. That's a good jump in age.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we just used to have the most crazy adventures on them up in the mountains.
I had me ma on them a couple of months ago.
How was that?
It was great. So I went and picked them up in the mountains because I find them very effective. I've done like antidepressants, but I found these to be a lot better, a lot more, as you're saying, natural, organic, earthy, rather than synthetic pills that are made. And you can feel the difference in your body and in your mind and in your soul and all that. So I'd go and pick a load of them with a couple of lads, brought them home, leave them in the gaff. And anybody who's going through stuff, like who's ready to go on a journey, or who's in the middle of something that they can't just break through, like a depression, or you know what I mean? They've hit rock bottom and they're just like, I don't know what the fuck to do with my life.
It's like a belt, isn't it? Coming out of nowhere. It's like
it can be like a bit of a smack.
Yeah.
Like, here, you thought that was reality. Bang! Here's a different perspective on reality. And so I gave them to me ma, and she took like a nice dose, about 2.5 grams or something like that, which is a nice dose to kind of open a door into a world that's not this one. And she just lay down on the sofa, put a blanket over her, things over her eyes, earphones, listened to some music, and she was happy like a little child in the fetal position for about 8 hours.
Like a meditation thing, is it?
Exactly like a meditation, yeah. Exactly like a meditation. But she couldn't find the time or the method to get there on her own. So the mushrooms kind of hold your hand and bring you in.
Yeah.
And say, come on in. And ayahuasca, DMT, these types of things that people are talking about in the Western world in the last couple of years are some of those tools or methods to do that. Yeah. So how did you go on the ayahuasca vibe?
Oh, you did ask me that originally.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I guess it was... there was a sort of a period. I stopped taking magic mushrooms quite a long time ago, because I had sort of bad experiences on them, which technically, when I look back on it now, would have been very therapeutic. I didn't suffer from depression, but when I look back on what my brain went through to manage those I was addressing demons really, and I didn't realize it. At the time I called it a bad experience, but actually an ayahuasca is kind of next level of that. So I was scared to do it, and that was kind of what I'm attracted to. I get excited by fear.
Yeah.
I suppose. So that's why I like snowboarding, and I did the fighting, and I raced motorcycles.
Not just adrenaline, there's a little bit of risk, a little bit of fear.
Well, no, I think the adrenaline is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's not just the adrenaline.
No.
If it was to go, right, you can do this and you'll just get a bump of adrenaline, that's grand. But there's also, I'm exploring some of my fears.
You're evolving and you're building. I think genetically, you're developing more code. You're getting more complete as a human.
So a good analogy is this podcast with me and Martin. This is exploring fears. Like, as you said, Martin is not like the typical traveller. He's much more open than what we would see as the typical traveller. If there is a way of saying it without offending people. Martin's a bit more open, and he's exploring fears. He's sitting here in a room with two other men, and we're talking about bleeding ayahuasca. He has never had this conversation in his life. I guarantee you that. This is the first time he's hearing most of this information.
Well, I mean, so Martin, just to put a perspective on it, you know, ayahuasca is it's like Chinese medicine in a way. It's the old ancient medicine. So say, for example, you thought you're back in your tribe in the Amazon. This is going back, and this is the culture of it. And you think your missus is cheating on you. You would go to the shaman, and he would give you ayahuasca, and you would have a vision, and that vision would clarify to you or help you with that. Maybe expose that she is or she isn't. So you might go to him with a problem with you feel of a pain in your body. He'll give you the ayahuasca, and Mother Ayahuasca would pass through your body and try to fix your liver or whatever it is. So it was used for all forms of healing, not just sort of medical, psychological, sociological. So it was quite a unique medicine.
Is it actually a herb we're talking about?
It's a plant.
A plant.
It's a plant, and it's a combination of two plants together.
Plant and a vine, and they mix them together.
And what I believe is that because one of the things that when you do the ceremonies is they give you a mat, they give you a bucket, and they give you the medicine, and you lie down, and within 20 minutes to half an hour, most people throw up, right? And they usually throw up this thick black sponge. It's pretty horrific, actually.
They kind of call it like a purge, where you just, all the stuff that's in your stomach kind of comes up.
Yeah, it's like a purge, and it is kind of like, because you're already in a hyper state in terms of, you know, perception. It's almost like you're vomiting up some kind of monster out of you, right? But I've actually heard recently that, in fact, that's when they include the bark of the plant, it causes you to vomit, and if you don't include the bark, you won't. But they include it because they want you to purge. They want that.
It's part of the process of it.
Yeah. So getting back to what you were saying was that I was aware of ayahuasca. It was sort of trending a little bit, which means that I was investigating a little bit because it was in my, you know, periphery, and you know, people were talking about it with Joe Rogan, and there was all that stuff was going on about ayahuasca, and there was some ceremonies in LA near my house that were going on once a month, and I kind of was scared of it, to be honest. So I thought, right, I have to do this. I've got to roll up my sleeves and go in and face these demons, and it's going to be horrific. It's going to be the longest night of my life, but I'm going to do this, right? Because I've got to face this. So I went in, rolled up my sleeves, like, I'm doing this. I'm going to do a week of these things. I had to go vegan for 10 days, which was horrific. I had to stop taking medicines and drugs and whatever and be completely pure.
To be clean, yeah.
Totally clean.
It's kind of like when I went into the bush and we were going hunting, there's a 5-day clean process where you have to get rid of all of the smells from the developed world. Otherwise, as soon as you go in, the animals will smell you. Yeah. They'll smell the soap and the toothpaste and all this. So in that world, you have to be clean. You have to be pure. You have to get rid of all of the kind of synthetic, because you're going into the natural. You're going inside into the natural.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hold on there for a second, because you said the word shaman. So a word that Martin might know that's similar to that is kind of like druid or witch doctor. But they have different names.
So I was
around
going.
the
That's
world.
the question I was going to ask. Is it some type of a religion over there or something like that they're using?
Well, I mean,
What's
I'm
the-
no
what's the-
expert,
What's
but
the full, complete meaning of all of this? Like,
this is just. I mean, I think religion is the wrong word. It's like sort of
Well,
saying that
it's like-
Buddhism is religion. It's more of it's a way of life. It's a cultural thing.
but if for instance, if you're taking I might call it a herb. You're saying it's some sort of
Same thing, let's say.
right. So you're taking this, you're purifying the body. Yeah, is that what it really is? To me, that's the picture I'm getting anyway. And
yeah.
you're doing all these things for a week. You to clear yourself in what sense?
Well, you're just,
I'm not picking up
you're
on the
going
right
on a kind of a
words.
journey, right? So,
Yeah.
so say, like, okay, let's just say we all decided to take some form of an organic hallucinogenic here now in this room, right? What would happen is we would just go on this crazy interactive trip together. What is going on? We may as well be in the TARDIS in this room, right? What's going on out there is like just not on our radar. We're living in this world. So you go out of your own perception of reality.
What's the? I don't mean to stop you from talking, right?
No, no,
What's the real idea of it? What is the real idea of going there and taking this? Is it a medicine? Yeah,
It's medicine to address
taking this medicine.
to address your inner demons, your issues. Like for example, there was a woman came from India and she was there. She was having problems with her mother and her sister since she was a kid. She was doing this, and I remember feeling from her when she came in because I was already a couple of ceremonies in, and when we were chatting before we did the ceremonies, I went, "This woman's going to have a rough ride. I can tell from the vibe from her, right?" And she was so sick, and she had a horrendous 10 hours, crawling around in the jungle on her hands and knees, vomiting, screaming. She thought because I was quite close to her where I was. She thought I was some kind of monster demon trying to come
Kind
after
of what
her.
you were explaining, a bad trip.
Like a bad
So-
trip.
But later on down
is
the
it
line,
a-
it might be seen as this
Well,
is
what-
actually the stuff that she needs to do.
Well, what happened was the next day we would always, whoever was doing it, we'd all sit around and eat fruit. It was great crack. And for breakfast, we'd all talk about the experience of the night before, what it did for us, or what issues or whatever.
That's what I mean.
She was like, "I'm out of here." That was just like nothing I've ever experienced.
She couldn't handle it. Basically.
Couldn't handle that at all. Like it was like, whoa, breaks on. And she left. And I was leaving 4 days later, and she rang on that fourth day. She'd been driving around Costa Rica in shock, kind of thing. But slowly realizing, processing what had happened, she actually realized, this has been really good for me. And she wanted to come back and do more. So she just needed to go off, process what had happened, which is what she did. And then she's like, no, I needed to go again. And so it's like a self-therapy, I suppose.
That's what I was going. That's what I was going to say. Is it like a healing ritual or something like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that the
100%.
main plan of it? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
And what you were
But
doing was
healing
leaning in.
from. So I was saying that people who go to it, is it like that they have effects in their body or their minds, or
Yeah, both, everything. It's
and
a full on.
they're sort of looking for a cleansing at the same time, is it?
Yeah.
Mind, body, spirit, soul, all of that type of stuff. And what you were doing was leaning into your fears, and she was leaning away from them. But then later on, she realised that leaning into them is where the healing is. That's
Yeah.
the kind of sense I got from it. Yeah.
And there was some people there who had extraordinary visionary epiphanies, and like one woman, I remember, she just sort of went into a star and exploded and became part of the universe. And she went at the other end of the scale. She went off into this incredibly beautiful journey, but she was probably
Like basically in our mind, like you're saying.
yeah, and most likely she was already in pretty good nick mentally and physically.
But it's so real that in your mind, you can't, this kind of world here that you can touch and feel, where we're in this room, fades away. It's almost like a curtain is pulled back slowly, and you're shown a different perspective or a different reality. And that different reality, in there's healing and lessons and scary things and lovely things.
Was there a group of people that was actually doing this? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a like a small group. This was a small retreat of maybe.
And where did this take place? It was in America.
It was in Costa Rica,
Yeah.
in the jungle. Yeah.
All right. And does it take places in other parts of the world as well? It does.
There's quite a few sort of like, let's call them Western people that are like have trained up as shamans, and are now doing ceremonies. Ultimately, all you need to know is how to put the medicine together. But I stayed clear of those. I went looking for basically a woman who all her parents and grandparents for generations had been shaman. She was Peruvian, and she did it at home in her own sort of house, right? So I thought, no, that's legit. I know that I'm doing that's the real deal. So I'm going after that. And I searched on the internet for her, and I just hit a wall. And she was supposed to be in Costa Rica. So eventually I just kind of gave up, and I found this guy, Eric, and I just decided to go to him. And over the course of the time I spent there, and our chats, I discovered that this woman had trained him up as a shaman, right? And then she spent 10 years in Costa Rica training up 2 people as shaman, and then she disappeared. So in a weird kind of way, I found her.
Well, in that kind of reason you're into numbers kind of way.
Yeah, it's like
there
this.
was a bit of what people call synchronicity or whatever. I didn't have to go search too far, but I had to search, and when I searched, I found something that was there waiting for me. This dude who was trained up by her. And just on that question, like I know a Peruvian woman who's coming here to this country to do similar ceremonies. Similar ceremonies. That's a hard one to say. Similar ceremonies. In Ireland with people who live here because she can travel, because she can come here and do it and do the medicine, do the healing, and bring people on that journey.
Right.
Maybe you should try.
Can I
it,
ask the question again?
Go back. Take a step back. Say that again.
I said maybe you should try that, Martin.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
But why?
But why?
No, can I? Because I'm lost in all this. That's why. Absolutely lost.
Would there be
man.
fear in it?
Can I ask the question?
Yeah.
Why do people go for this in the first place?
I mean, I
could
don't.
have asked
I'm
you, why
not an
did you go,
expert.
but I'm just saying.
You know why I went, right? I wanted to face my demons. It turned out, as it happened, I had pretty much a very positive experience. I didn't really, even the dark stuff that I came across, and some spirits that I'm spoken with, and even Mother Ayahuasca, when I spoke to her, none of it was really scared me, and I was ready for the fight. I was ready for it to be really have the shit knocked out of me.
What age were you? Just so for context.
Early 50s.
All right, okay. So you'd been through your life, you'd had 50 years.
Yeah.
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 Because I know, a lot of young people go and do mushrooms and they have a certain type of experience. And then, 40, 50-year-olds do mushrooms or ayahuasca and they have a different experience.
It's a huge, you've a whole value.
Do you know, however you see the fact that you have experienced this now, right? Do you know how you, now this is not interrogation, right? It's only just a normal chat, right? But
Yeah.
do you know how you felt before you done this, yeah? Whatever way you felt, right? Just saying. When you done this then, yeah? Have you ever gone back to your own self afterwards? Or did you ever feel the way you felt before this, say, maybe, just say 12 months previous or whatever, many years previous?
I mean, no, not any more. I mean,
Do you still feel like you're completely different since this?
It has, like, am I a different person? Like,
in a sense where, like the healing process thing.
On the healing side of it, I didn't get what I thought was coming, because what happened was the shaman said, because I know I come from damaged background and somewhat, right? So I know I'm sort of damaged goods on a level. And when I worked with abused children and stuff, I was able to draw them out because I knew what to say, because I come from that. And when I worked with the ISPCC, and I worked with Bernardo's and that. So I was expecting some dark stuff to come out, but what happened? The shaman said, "No, you've already managed all that in your life. You're good. That's why you didn't have to face it."
Suppose the question was, what I was trying to ask was, do you feel like stronger since you've done that?
Yes, I do.
Maybe that's
100%. It was like it was the sort of final kind of cog that went click. Now I get why. Because it's life is so complex, isn't it? And the spirituality comes into life, which is not tangible because you can't touch it, but you can believe in it. You can sometimes feel it if you're empathic. And for me, what happened was it was the sort of setting of the concrete in a way. I just sort of realized I could sort of see the code, or I could see what was behind the architecture of life is what I was seeing. And so that was kind of a bit of a revelation for me. I wasn't expecting that. So I got something different and I went in looking for. And it just, I think, for me personally, I'm really glad I did it. I'd equally be as cautious doing it again. You know, I'd be equally as fearful. But I think what's interesting for me, but the question you're asking me is, are you nervous that if you did something like that, it might change you and you couldn't get back to being you?
No, not even. I probably wouldn't even think about doing it. Straight up, that's being honest with you. That's the honest answer there.
So he's at the planting the seed in your head. So we're giving you the opportunity to think about
I
it.
can honestly tell you, I wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely saying
But
that.
by even saying that, you are thinking about it because you are saying in your head, that's not something I could go into.
No.
But what's more interesting is
No,
why.
it doesn't mean, Dean, because I'm talking about something, doesn't mean I'm thinking about actually doing something.
Yeah, of course.
We're talking here. We're not just thinking here. We're just talking, having a chat here. So therefore, because I'm talking about it doesn't mean I'm contemplating it. I'm absolutely not.
We'll go back to his
I
question.
am saying that I would genuinely, with all due respect, like I don't mean to be, I'm ignorant in saying
You can
this.
say anything to me, man.
And I'm not dissing what people do either. People have make their own choices in life, and of course they're entitled to make their choices. But me personally, I was lost in the whole thing there. I was trying to figure out what all this was about.
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely new to me. But I don't know. I don't think I would ever do. I would ever do like that.
You don't have a curiosity about it on that level.
No, I'd be saying like here, for instance, look at if I'm looking for healing, I go to my local church.
Right.
That'd be my healing there, and get mass and receive the body of Christ. So like me going into the church as a down and out, and when I go in there and get mass and the knowledge from the priests, and once I receive the body of Christ, body, the blood, the soul, and the divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ in the blessed Holy Sacrament, I am like a brand new person coming out of that church.
Well, I mean, what you've just described, because I'm an ex-Catholic, I was raised Catholic, right? What you've just described to me is almost identical from my experience with the ayahuasca. So that's
why I have my energy, my strength, me guidance, everything I do in line of making decisions on stuff. I like to go to the church and pray about it, and somehow.
Well, it's to me what it is it's all in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how you unlock it, and your process for unlocking it is that. And I remember going to confession, so I was clean to take the Eucharist. I remember I was an altar boy for about a week, and I got kicked out for stealing the wine. I wouldn't mind the wine shite like it's. But
I used to steal all the money.
You used to steal money,
yeah.
But anyway, but I, you know what I'm saying is like what I used to be quite anti-Catholicism at a certain point in my life, but then I realised it's kind of all the same. And your definition of how you get what you need, it's the same.
That's what I was saying earlier on, and that's why I'm not dissing what you do.
Yeah,
I am saying different people have different views in life. They have different ways of settling things in their own heads, if you like.
Yeah.
And for you, what you done was you're saying was a great experience. Me, I'm saying I wouldn't do that, and just maybe if it's something that I like to do, you probably wouldn't do that, if you know what I'm saying. Now, we're not just talking maybe about ourselves here. We could be talking about a million people at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean now?
100%.
But he asked the question, would I be even thinking about doing that? I said, no, I wouldn't. Ask me why, I don't know. I just probably wouldn't be into that sort of ritual.
But it's very similar, he's saying. Like the word priest and the word shaman and the word druid and the word witch doctor are very, very similar. There are origins that are, very,
there is,
very
but
similar.
maybe it's I'm not saying this is the answer to everything anyway. Maybe it's probably sometimes maybe how we're brought up, and also it might be who we come in contact with through our lives as we go along on journeys. And
Absolutely.
of course, this man has been all over the world here, Richie Smyth, yeah?
Yeah.
So I could be guessing something and I could be guessing wrong. I don't know. Of course, you have met people throughout your life. Is it was this something that someone presented to you or someone told you about, or did you just take this on board yourself? Like, if you don't mind me asking the question.
No, not at all. I mean, in hindsight, sounding very kind of spiritualized by it all, it's like it kind of came to me when I was ready for it. I realize now in hindsight. At the time, I was just exploring conversations with people. I'm interested in alternative medicine. I'm interested in functionality. Like I love functional training, functional medicine. What I mean by functional is that it's connected. Everything's connected. So, in functional training, for example, if you're just doing squats or you're just doing bicep curls in isolation, you're not really training the body correctly. Where you're focusing in on one muscle, whereas function would you train the whole arm, pec, delts. You know, so it's about how it's all connected. Same in medicine. You know, if you take if you're trying to cure a problem, you might not necessarily go directly to that problem. You might look at the effects it's having on other organs or tissue or whatever in your body and actually start to fix them and work your way into the real problem. So functionality is something I'm very interested in.
I remember when I was doing MMA training and you'd get like a groin strain or something like that, and you'd go to the physio and he'd say to you, it's not your groin that the issue is with. The issue is with something else in your body, and it's usually diagonal to the pain, because the pain in your groin is compensating for something in your knee, which is compensating for something from the diagonal angle.
The neural pathways.
Yeah.
If you Matsu, Matsu is this 2,000-year-old Japanese therapy sort of treatment, and that in the Matsu, that's what they do. Is the whole idea is that our bodies get calcified through lifestyle, through injury, through bad posture, through whatever, and the neural pathways from the brain to the muscle, specifically those individual pathways, they get clouded and messed up. And so with Matsu, they clear those. So they clear that pathway that would run, and a lot of the stuff they do is diagonal.
And one man's Matsu is another man's Reiki or yoga or ayahuasca or going to the church. I find now at this stage of your life, they're all kind of similar methods to get to a place, to get to somewhere where you feel stronger and freer.
So what's this one, the Matsu? Is that something to do with the Chinese as well? How they do it and all? Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with Chinese medicine except that I've seen some amazing results, like incredible results that are the opposite to what Western medicine was presenting as a solution. Yeah. Let's just say, right? But I came upon a Matsu because I've loads of body injuries and my back is messed up from fighting and motorcycle accidents and snowboard accidents, and so I've been kind of beating my body against the planet for my entire life, and I carry injuries. So I've been managing those injuries, and I I have my guy who adjusts me and fixes me and all that, and I've got a masseuse who's sort of almost a physio who would work on muscle. I train, I have good nutrition, except I drink probably, and it's the only week. But I still was having problems, and I got recommended to try a Matsu, and I went along, and of course I'm inquisitive, so while I was doing it, I was asking the guy. So he's explaining to me what he's doing, and actually it was sort of again the gel that made all the other things work. All the others would work locally. It's like I get a massage or I get an adjustment, I'm fine for a week, but then it would come back. And with the Matsu, it started to really, it was like it was helping all of those things keep it fixed, and that was to do with the neural pathways through your body, which is like, because your nervous system is your life in terms of living. If you kill a nerve, that part of your body will die off you. And there's another what I see it as a more aggressive version of a Matsu, which I've tried recently. It was excellent, and it's called myoreflex, and it works on trigger points in the body. So in other words, you say, in the most basic definition of it, you find a muscle that's part of these neural pathways. You go in really hard with it and press into it really hard so it hurts. So the brain goes.
I've seen them doing that on horses.
Yeah, doing it on
horse's leg locks.
Yeah,
and then you get the horse doctor coming in.
That's what
back
they do.
To the witch doctors, back to the priests.
Yeah,
there's people out there with knowledge, and they press the right thing or they manipulate the right thing, and you get results from it. I've seen that. It was an amazing video. The horse's leg was all locked up, and your man just.
Well, it's
massage the
immunology has become really, really. I think it's a real 21st century approach to medicine generally, and immunology at its core basically is the body's own system for fixing itself. So we're like the most perfectly designed unit, a human being, and we know how to fix ourselves. Our brain and our immune system they go to town. So that's what happens when you get injured. You get a gash in your arm, like the gash, the cells in the area send out proteins going, alert, alert, we're hurt. And then through the process of angiogenesis, the brain floods the area with blood vessels, which brings nutrients and healing and takes away toxins and infection. And that's, so the brain and the body are doing that, but they don't need any help to do that. They don't need pharmaceuticals.
About a year ago, I nearly lost my finger in a biking accident, and I was just fascinated by the healing process and by the fact that certain parts of my body, like around the scar, was sensitive, and it was sensitive so because it was healing, because then I wouldn't touch it. You know what I mean? There was pain there, so I'd say the fuck away from it.
Yeah, that's what pain's there for, to let you know. Like a lot of times, people taking painkillers is a bad idea, because if you can't feel the pain is there to warn you, and if you don't feel it, like I know of people who get cortisone or steroid injections for, like, say, a herniated disc, and the only issue I have with that is that they're like, oh, I've no more pain, I'll get on with it. So in that painless state, the damage is still there.
Walking on it,
so they're making it worse for the next 6 months, and they don't, so then it's worse at the end, and another injection. And I don't know, but and then
it's like forgetting there's something actually wrong with them there.
Well, the body's telling you it's wrong, so be careful, stay away. Yeah.
That brings me on to, I'm really interested in what we put into our body in terms of medicines, in terms of food. You were talking about diet and so on, in terms of exercise, in terms of what media we consume and so on, And like, I grew up in a community where the main medicine was alcohol. And basically what it was a painkiller. It was an emotions killer.
Mentally and physically,
Mental, emotions, spiritual. It would just turn all that down. We're feeling something. We're in some kind of pain. Right, pints of Guinness, pour them on top of the pain, and we'll be grand. I'm really interested in that. And like we were talking about, doing mushrooms, getting a healing, but you might get a bad trip and you might fall off a cliff. But how many people have gone home and battered their partners or driven a car into the wall on the alcohol that we promote every day? But we have big fears for the other types of methods, for the other Chinese medicines, Peruvian medicines, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up with alcohol and alcoholism, so my rejection of that was to investigate marijuana, mushrooms, things that didn't have the same effects.
When you say grew up, were you a drinker yourself? Basically?
No, I wasn't. My dad was a big drinker. Typically of that, men who raised kids in the 60s.
Yeah.
He'd disappear out, come back hammered. A good night, he'd be laughing, a bad night, smash up the house. And so as a kid growing up, first son of an alcoholic family, I sort of took on the role of father figure in the house very quickly. And so part of that was like, no, I can't drink. And it was probably I lost my dad now about 17 years ago, and like one of the things he would have wanted most in life was for me to go to the pub with him and have a pint with his son. That was the thing, but I could never give it to him because of the pain he brought into the house for all of us growing up. So I didn't even really start, like, in Ireland. And when I was growing up, once you could get into the pub, which is around 14, you were drinking. Everybody was drinking. All the lads were trying to grow beards and look like men and drink. And I was like, I'll have a my waddy. And I was like, no, we're not buying you a my waddy. Well, I'll buy my own. And I just refused to drink till probably I was about 20, which in those days was like I hung in there for quite a while.
That's some kind of awareness or strength, because I was on a similar path. You know what I mean? Both of my parents drinking. I don't think they mind me saying, I think 32 years ago this week they've stopped drinking. But my childhood was alcohol, in not just in my life but in the whole community, and I had a big fear. Am I going to be a fucking alcoholic here? You know what I mean? Is this destined? Have I got any choice in this?
Is it in your DNA,
Yeah, is it in? Yeah, it's so much part of the culture. It's so much part of the social pressure. Is it in my fucking DNA as well? Do I have any choice whatsoever?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because growing up for me as well, my perception of the travelling community, and I don't mean this in any derogatory sense, right, was that alcoholism was rank. I would see travellers on the street so drunk and with lumps out of them. Right, lumps out of their body, going, Jesus, how are they even, right? And that was, that I'm talking about in the late 70s, right, in the early 80s, and I had a kind of a an interesting thing happened to me. And I'm sorry, I'm taking this a little bit off
That's
course.
great.
But,
Do it.
but
Okay.
there was a festival called Carnsore Point, and it was something to do with they were going to build a nuclear station or something down in Wexford, right? And so it was a festival protest. I was about 15 or something, and I went, I'm going. It was my first time to go to a festival, long hair and smoking joints, and like it was just like a whole other world, right? But what I came away from the festival with was I ended up making friends with a couple of local travellers in the area, right? They were English, like pikey, right? One of them was a chap called Kevin Killeen, who was an amazing man, and so they would have been a good bit older than me. Him and his uncle Tony were like this. They were part of a community of travellers. It wasn't really like a halting site, more like they were just dotted around the place. But they were travellers. They had goats. They had their caravan. They lived off the land that they lived. They didn't do regular jobs the way, say, my dad did.
Right.
But they weren't the travellers that I knew from the city, which felt really hardcore and harsh, and alcohol just ruled, right?
Yeah.
And these guys were smoking weed and they didn't really drink, and it opened my eyes to another kind of traveller. So I started to see
The difference in travellers.
yeah, and then I suddenly started to realise there was travellers all over the country. They were very different to the travellers who lived in Dublin City.
Yes.
And I then got a job working in the back of Dublin Castle as a photographer, and there was a site at the back of us, and there was terrible violence in the site at the time, and the police, we'd ring. There's a girl had to be beaten up, or it was a local girl to
Yes.
the site, and we'd ring the cops, and the cops wouldn't go in. They just go, we don't want to know. It's their own problem, and so I remember seeing all that when I was a kid growing up, and then going down to Wexford, and I had some traveller friends in there. To this day, if I saw them, I'd hug them, that kind of
Yes.
way. And Kevin went on to be a tattooist. He used to tattoo all the bike gangs, and it was interesting to see that level of dynamic within the travelling community
Yeah.
for me, And then
Because we have a picture in our heads, of the homeless man or of the black man or of the traveller man, you know what I mean? And it's just like, the settled person. There's people growing up in Ballymona, Coolock and Finglas, and they live a different life to people growing up in Wicklow or Wexford or British Bay, And in our heads, we don't think they're all the same. We know that people who live in different locations, people who are surrounded by concrete go on a certain way. People who are surrounded by rivers and lakes and mountains go on a different way, because you're more connected to.
So are you saying that basically the travellers that you knew in Wexford basically were different from the travellers you knew that you seen in Dublin basically?
completely,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
completely.
if you
I wouldn't have
didn't-
known the ones in Dublin. I'd only have
No,
experienced
that's
them.
fine. No, the ones I said, the ones you seen.
Yeah,
So basically, if you didn't know travellers from either side, Wexford or Dublin, and you heard about travellers, you might picture them all the same. It's possible, is it?
well, yeah. I mean, I think that's
Whether
it's
it be a good picture or a bad picture.
just
I'm
yeah,
just
exactly.
saying.
I mean, yeah, of course, if you don't get in, I'm interested in just about anything in life. I think life's amazing, and so I love digging into something and learning something new and finding out new things about. So I think it's true to say that of anything, it's like, oh, classical music. Well, it's just all orchestra. Then you go in and you realise there's a difference between, Rachmaninoff and Beethoven and Mozart,
Yeah.
And in the same way, what's another example? Any kind of tribe, let's call it, okay, your tribe, there's variations in the tribe, right?
Yeah.
Just the same as there's in my tribe, whatever, middle-aged white man tribe, whatever
or
it is.
or
right?
religions or
Religions,
martial arts.
Yeah.
All martial arts aren't like karate or MMA.
No, that's what's unique about humans, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and also remember, I was talking there about sort of the late 70s, early 80s. That's a very different time to now.
That's right.
It's very that's pre-internet, that's a very different world. Things weren't spoken about. Things were, there was a lot. Communication was much more basic. So
Maybe the world has become more intelligent now for one reason or another.
I think the access, the availability of information is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now. It's absolutely phenomenal, which is the really positive side of all that. I think, yeah.
Because there seems to be an advancement in everything throughout the world.
Yeah.
Whether it be travellers, whether it be settled people, whether it be whether it be computers, no matter what it might be,
Yeah,
they've come a long way since the 80s and 90s, put it that way.
yeah. Well, I mean, the evolution of say the travelers, and you could educate me a lot on this actually, because there's a film project I have based in the traveling community, a movie I want to make, and when I was spitballing it with my other two collaborators on it, right, it was like I was explaining to them at the time that when I was younger, the only real problem that I saw the travelers had, and it was the same problem my own family had, was alcoholism, right? Um, that was the one I saw that was the problem, and I didn't see it in the Wexford of it all. I only saw it in the city,
Right.
and I understood it somewhat because I come from a house that got smashed up on a reasonably regular basis, right, because of alcohol. And but then what I was hearing was that cocaine had entered into the traveling community, and my experience of the cocaine of it all is that when you have someone who's drunk, really drunk, and you give them cocaine so they can stay more drunk and get you, there's a psychosis that comes on with that that's actually mental. And I went, that's a crazy world to be getting into. I want to explore that to see how humanity gets through that level of psychosis. So we there's a movie that I'm trying to get made, which is called Fighting Charity. And I'll tell you roughly the setup of it. So you've got a set of modern times against that sort of background. You have a halting site with this man called Jimmy who has a family, and one of his little daughters, 6, 7, Charity is her name. He's sort of the king of the travelers when it comes to fighting, and she idolizes him completely. So she's shadow boxing. She's like, she just wants to be her dad. She idolizes him, right? And of course, the mother's like, don't be doing that. Do girl things and all that. And then, so there's at the opening of the film, there's a big fight, a challenge from another family, a rival family. They're the ones who are stealing the drugs, and they've gone to that next level. Whereas Jimmy and his family are kind of more old school, wholesome in their ways, right? There's not really alcoholism and all that stuff with them. So you got this kind of two families within the traveling community. So there's a fight, and of course Jimmy wins. And on the way back, Charity is skipping along, delighted her dad wins, and she runs into the two sons of the guy who lost. And they're really jealous and they tease her, and they start a fight, and they're fighting her, and there's two of them, and they're pinning her down. And in desperation, she grabs a stick and she tries to hit them, but she stabs one of the kids in the neck, and he bleeds out and he dies. This is how the movie opens up, right? And
This is the opening scenes.
this is the opening 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Okay. And so all the women of the two traveling families get together, and they just go, we have to do something here, because our men are about to go on a bloodbath here. This has to be made right. And they decide amongst them that she has to go. She's to be fostered into England, and she has to disappear. It's the only way to sort of take the heat off this situation. So Jimmy, who loves his daughter, has to take her at 6 or 7 down to the ferry, put her kicking and screaming onto a boat, and send her off to foster in England, right? And she doesn't know what is going on. All she knows is she defended the honour of her dad, who she idolises. And now that very man who loves her, supposed to love her, is sending her away, never to be seen again. So she's distraught. And she grows up in England, a very angry chick, okay? And then the story jumps 20 years, and you see her now grown up as a woman. She's like 29. She's like fighter. She's tough. She's damaged goods. She's angry at everything in life. And we know it's all from that original trauma, right?
We have that perspective
on why.
But yeah.
So now, we understand why she's so angry.
She mightn't understand it.
No, and she's still struggling with her demons. And so what happens is, so you get to know her and you get to see all that in England, and then she's expecting her foster parents over for dinner, and there's a ding dong on the door, and she opens the door, and it's her grandmother Roisin, okay, who she hasn't seen in 20 years. Can I come in? And she's like, what are you doing here? This is like, she's not expecting this. And Roisin says, look, your mother's dying. Her last request is that she sees you before she passes away.
Right.
So Charity's like, get out, fuck you. This is, how dare you come in back into my life like this, and all that stuff that goes on, right?
Yes, she was angry.
So she slams the door and all that, but she kind of knows inwardly she has to face. She needs closure, I suppose, on what has happened to her and her real family and all that. So she eventually decides, I'll go back, and so she goes back, and she does see her mother, but it's really about a father and daughter relationship, and a love, a bond that's been shattered, right, by an accident. And so the story, it then opens up into the movie. The second act is there's a funeral, and at the wake, somebody in the family of the son who died realizes who she is, and it starts a whole bloodbath between the two
We
families.
also get to see the travelling community and their culture
Through
her eyes,
Correct.
which she's part of, but she doesn't realise.
Correct, yeah. And there's a great character in it called Katie Jo, who's like a 13-year-old traveller girl who's like tough as nuts, smokes cigarettes, wheels and deals. She's like, and
She's like a different version of Charity.
She's what Charity would have become if she hadn't have gone away. And
we better make this movie. That was it.
So at some point, I want you to read the script, Mark, because I want you to put your traveller filter through it. Now, you'll obviously, if you don't mind, you'll hopefully you'll enjoy it. You got to remember, it's written by people who are not travellers,
Yes,
but have done a lot of research, and also the dialogue might be probably a little bit feeling cheesy because, again, you're caught with a movie. Unlike in a documentary, people, when they sit down to watch a documentary, they want to see the reality of it. That's what they want to see, right? With a movie, it's, you're creating a sort of a hyper state. You want to be entertained. You want to be emotionally involved in a different way. It's a different craft. So sometimes if the dialogue is too correct and too on the nose, or too precise to the traveller community, a lot of people around the world, even though they speak English, might not be able to understand it. Then you have to throw subtitles onto it.
yes,
it's
so
kind of like
to try and find a balance.
if you made Siege of Jadotville, that's not how it was in actual real life. That's not the words they used. That's not the people who was there. It was different guys. It wasn't those actors. Certain things happened. Other things that you show didn't happen. But what you're trying to do is convey a story.
Well, on Jadotville, I did a ton of research, and I met all the survivors, the men who were still alive.
Yeah.
And I tried to be as accurate that way as possible. The truth is,
but it's not a documentary.
No, it's not a documentary. It's a story, and it's the Alamo. Jadotville is a western. It's the Alamo. It's Zulu. It's a bunch of men surrounded by a big enemy.
What would be the one for this then? If that's the Alamo, what's Fighting Charity?
Yeah, can we go back to the other one for a minute, please?
Yeah,
if you
of
don't
course.
Mind. Has the full script been written on this now? It has.
Yeah.
It has. Yeah. All right. And is there a date for release, or has the acting taken place?
No. We're only at that point now where we're going to start talking about actors, and actually, interestingly enough, talking to Dino about it, because I was quite interested in the idea that there would be real traveller people in the movie.
Yes.
Right. As much as you can, that's a great thing to say, but they still have to be able to deliver to the camera. It's like me saying, well, I'd like making a movie about policemen in the world of the police, and I want to use real policemen. Most real policemen can't really act. So that's a reality of it. But you can draw performances from people in a very kind of caricature way.
Yeah.
But what we talked about, myself and Dino, was maybe setting up some kind of an acting school for travellers.
Yes.
Here in the area. That was done after that movie City of Gods. The guy who cast that set up a acting school for children. But you had to come from the favelas to go to the school, and I went there.
Favelas is like the halting sites of Rio.
Sort of, yeah, bit more biblical, bit more biblical, yeah. But so in the same way, we thought, okay, well, what if we set up some kind of an acting school here? So it gives an opportunity to traveller kids to flex that muscle, because this is very much the muscles of this generation now, the future, and out of that, maybe we might find an amazing Katie Jo or an amazing character. We might not find the main guy because there's too much of the craft of acting needed to deliver it. Because Charity and Jimmy carry the movie, right? So in a long shot, you know, you could be Jimmy and you could be absolutely amazing. No way known, we'd have to screen test you. You know, that kind of way?
Yeah.
Whereas with an actor, you bring him in. So it's like, we just thought it might be an interesting part of giving something back to the community here.
Yeah, and also
giving
that you're
to travellers
leaving something in the community. You're leaving tools
behind.
rather than, for example, Into the West. It's a traveller favourite film, but it was made in this community. There's not much residual left after that other than the romantic idea of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where we talked about what can we leave that's fucking concrete. Make the film great, everyone comes in, it's a lovely budget, great actors, but if we left something behind, if you give a man, if you show a man how to fish, you know what I mean? That kind of analogy.
Yeah.
He'll be able to feed himself for the rest of his life. Where if you just catch a fish for him and hand it to him, he'll feed well for that one night.
Well, I mean, movies do it all the time to communities. They steal. It's a terrible thing, you know. But they steal what they need to make the movie, and they're gone, right? What myself and Dino talking about, what you're saying now, Dino, is like, no. What we do is this helps us to maybe make a more interesting, more honest movie, but it also it generates a whole new world for people to work with as well. Then maybe these kids could start making their own movies.
Yeah.
We talked about this during the census. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a film school here that teaches kids how to make films? And say I came and I gave a lecture, I could pull on a load of director friends and producer friends and editing friends to say, come up and give
and
talks.
There is some of that, but it's not connected. Like there is a guy who works in Ballymun, Jeff O'Toole, and he runs drama and script writing and filmmaking, but it's not connected and it's not resourced. You know, they're tipping around with a couple of shillings where we should be able to go, can we throw 200 grand a year at this, come up with a film, take on 20 kids, some of them are actors, some of them are sound, some of them are video, blah, 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 and you have something that a community can bring home some breads to the table themselves, rather than just having the payday, everyone gets €1,000, you're happy for a weekend, and then that's it, it's kind of gone away.
Yeah.
And I think we would be serving this city better if we done the latter, if we built something on top of it.
I think so, yeah.
It's like it'd be like baking a cake and using the natural ingredient. You see, I've seen traveller films, where they use American actors, English actors, you name it. So don't these actors have to be trained into talking and acting like travellers?
Absolutely, they do. Yeah,
some of them straight up, some of them genuinely makes a mess of the thing.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you should say that because there's a man called Brendan Gunn.
Don't get me. Not stop you from talking. It doesn't take away the fact that they're actors, but it doesn't mean that they're doing the exact. They're actually doing the exact thing as travellers do when it comes to traveller films.
Of course, they will. It really comes down to how much the director and the actor and the producer lets them explore and research the actual world. There's some movies where it's just picture postcard, and there's some movies where it's like really, whoa, that's... So have you seen the movie Snatch?
Yeah.
So have you seen Brad Pitt's portrayal of a traveller in that? So what would you think of that performance?
I think the performance, the fighting performance, he would have fitted the bill for that. I think the talking performance, I genuinely think he made a mess of stuff.
He made a mess of it?
I do think so, yeah.
But and why?
Now, there's probably thousands of people mightn't agree with that.
A bit too much attitude.
He was trying too hard to be a traveller, he went over the limit completely.
Yeah, he
turned it up to 11 or 11 and a half.
Obviously, he's an actor. I understand that he's not a traveller, he's an American actor. But he went way beyond the trying part. It's probably because he was told that by the producer or the directors, whoever was giving him the...
Well, I know the story behind this, so I can tell you if you like. So there's a man called Brendan Gunn. He's a dialect coach. He's amazing. He's from the north of Ireland. Yeah. Actually looks quite like you, believe it or not. Yes. You're of the same DNA. It's a weird thing. I was thinking it when I was mentioning his name. But Brendan's he can do any form of dialect. He's just amazing. He does all the big movie stars. And he trained Brad for
become a traveller.
Yeah, and what happened was the producers on that movie, they wanted to make sure that what he said, the public, the American public, could understand, okay, the English he spoke, the traveller English. But when Brendan went to Brad's house in America and they sat down and they looked at travellers talking and the way they were talking, and he could see how they really talked, the thing that he took from was it's impossible to understand. You grab words here and there, and he went against the producers and he pushed that to its limit. He wanted to go. It was like a game with the producers that he was like, no, I'm going to put my mark on this. I'm going to talk like a traveller, even faster and even harder to understand.
Brad Pitt himself.
Yeah, he wanted to do that, and he had the power to do that because he's Brad Pitt.
That's right.
So he walks on set and he does. I'm going to talk like this, and Guy Ritchie goes, "I love it, brilliant. Let's shoot." And that's how that happened.
So that
So
was his
basically Brad Pitt-
artistic kind of license.
So he was setting his own rules at the same time, basically.
Yeah,
So
lovely.
Brad, yeah. So now that didn't mean that Brendan didn't have to teach him how to talk like that. But he had to still get taught how to.
And it also
how to
doesn't
talk
mean
like
that that's how travellers are, but this is an act. He's acting. He's creating a world.
You see how we had them films there? One was The Family, The Snapper,
Roddy
Van,
Doyle stuff.
all of them films.
Yeah.
They were all Irish actors,
Yes, mostly. Yeah.
right? Yeah, but the main scenes was the Irish actors, and even better again, they were Dublin actors. So they fitted the bill in every way there.
Yeah.
They didn't have to practice accents. They didn't have to practice culture. They knew they are Dublin. That's it. If you know what I mean. So they made let's say that's why the films became so popular. If you want to use that word.
Yeah, like
That's
the
why they were
like
so
the commitments.
Yeah, the commitments. That's why they were so great of films.
Correct.
Because they use, as I said earlier on, they use the right ingredients.
Natural
They
ingredients.
use the natural people for them films.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying in a traveller film just go and pick every Tom, Dick and Harry for it, because that doesn't work either. I know
Tom,
that.
Dick and Winnie.
Well, or Dini. Anyway,
No, but what you the strong version is you get
I think
you get a Brendan Gleeson and you get him to come and live with you for 6 weeks, and
Yeah.
then he walks out and he's a traveller,
yes.
right? Do you know what I mean? That's he absorbs
And
because
he's
he's
saying-
already culturally
Well,
at
he's
an
closer,
advantage.
he's closer to home. Let's put it that way.
Correct. Yeah.
He's saying dog instead of dag.
Dags, yeah, Dags.
Martin said Brad Pitt
Tags.
was perfect.
Sure, I couldn't
but
even
all
do
he
that
needed
one.
to change was one letter.
I couldn't even imitate that one. Dags.
But you look like him.
Yeah. But no, I think. Look, I'm not saying there hasn't been some great films about travellers, but I think they need to bring it a little bit more closer to home, and get if they really want a traveller film, and to maybe look like just portrayals on traveller movies that has no connection with travellers. Absolutely. Now, ask me what one right now, and it can't come to head.
No, I
If
get
I
it.
was to watch films, whatever amount of movies was made in the past about travellers, I could maybe write a book about the parts that have no connection with travellers whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
And that's what makes, in my eyes, maybe not in the settled man's eyes, or the American man or the English man.
But the argument is
He's
there.
only going by what he sees.
The argument is there,
But the
Martin.
traveller that knows it and lives it, then he sees. He's looking at that screen. He said, "Gee, what's going on here? It's just that's not travellers."
So, I have a question for you, Martin. It's,
Yes, go ahead.
When I first encountered this Dino character, right, and we were doing the census thing, he was getting involved in traveller culture, and this whole project, okay? And he was telling me about you, and he was quite excited about it. But he said he told me one expression that you had that I found fascinating, that I wanted you to explain to me properly, which is he said to me that you would say to him that you would take the shame from your mouth and put it in your pocket.
Yes.
And I'd love to understand what that means exactly for you when you say that.
Well, I suppose it could mean a lot of things. One thing I would like to think is that if I'm going to be shy or ashamed about what I do, even when I'm not doing anything wrong, like I'd be, let's say I'm inclined to feel embarrassed, even sitting here talking now as we speak, I would be inclined to be ashamed to do this. although it brings no shame. So what in at that moment, I'd probably be thinking about what other people thinks of me actually, in the things I do in life and things I don't do in life, the things I say and don't say. So what I'm saying here is, look, let's say nice and simple, to heck with everybody. I'm just going to take the shame out of my mouth and put it in my pocket.
Is that something that you're raised to feel?
It's something that I would have heard a lot through let's put it this way, very simply, a lot of, I don't know how it is in the settled community, but a lot of travellers would be very shy and they'd use the word shame, although it's not exactly shame. They'd use the word like, I'm ashamed to do this, or I'm ashamed to do that, or I'm not ashamed to do something. So that's a word I would say, look, hold it here for 1 second. Let's get on with it. There's no point in being ashamed to do something because of what other people would think of what you're really doing. So that would be my word to use as, look, I'm going to take the shame out of me mouth and put it in my pocket. In other words, it's locked away. You have nothing to worry about. Get on and do what you're, as long as it's reasonable and respectful. Get on and just do what you're doing. Don't be thinking about what other people thinks about you. Because if you're thinking about what other people thinks about you, sure, you're as well off just hiding away completely. Because you'd be ashamed to speak, move, walk, talk, or whatever it might be.
So it's like an inversion. It's almost the antithesis of shame, the definition.
For instance, if you said to me, like say, could be anything. It could be simply anything. There's a part in a movie there, and I said to you, no, I'd be ashamed to do that. Then the other person step up, look, forget about the shame. I'm going to take that part. Like that. I'm just using that as a you know what I mean, an expression kind of thing. But that could be in any sense. Like for instance, if a person asked me to, like say, sing a song, for instance, I'd say, no, I can't sing because I'm shy to sing, but I'd use the word, no, I'm too ashamed to sing.
So shame and shy have a similar, that makes sense to my brain.
They do have a similar correspondence, if you like. Yeah. To me, they do, because that would be a word that would be used a lot in the travelling community. Like, for instance, someone doing something stupid, for instance, getting into trouble or something, and you're inclined to say, look, you're only shaming yourself, you're only making a show of yourself there. But the word we would sort of use would be, look, you're shaming yourself. So you're bringing shame on yourself by doing something wrong, but also the word can be used even when you're doing nothing wrong. That you're, it can be used for, as I said, it can be used for a million reasons.
So it's like you're carrying the shame.
Not exactly carrying it, no.
Right.
No, it's not exactly carrying the shame. It's more of a word that's used than the actual effect or... Do you know what I mean now?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
It is a good question. And it's hard to explain it.
Yeah, I was trying to get my head around it.
So it's all about, I think it's all about what goes on in our own heads.
Yeah.
Because you use you done a phrase last week when we were talking, or a couple of weeks ago, we were talking to Shawnee, and it was away with the fairies. And you described it like somebody's cue, where we describe it as somebody's off their bleeding head.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a different use of that phrase. So there might be a different use of shame here, because what we think of shame, say me and you, Richie, I think might be different from what Martin is saying.
It's absolutely different, because I'm just thinking shame is where you feel you've done something wrong, or you feel bad, you feel ashamed. It's a moral sort of stance, isn't it?
It is.
So I think there's a thing here where Martin might feel not confident, a little bit insecure, and that some other traveller at some other point could call him out for doing this, and he wants to avoid situations like that. That's my experience from young traveller men, that they wouldn't want to be seen to do stuff with me in case down the line, for example, at a wedding, they might get called out or vexed, going, see you fucking idiot, you were doing that thing there with Dino, and they'll call them out on it.
Right.
As a kind of, as a slagging thing, and slagging has currency in the traveller community.
For instance, right, let's say, like a few weeks ago, there was a big, what do you call it over here, do you remember the lads were singing, Dexter was singing over here, yeah?
Yeah, there was a concert in the
middle of Ballymore. That was great. So now, we were literally standing there watching, it was great. So for instance, right, for like the likes of Dean turn around and say to me, why didn't you go up there? I'd say no, so I'd be ashamed to. So the reality of it is you're actually thinking about what other people would think of you going up there. Like for instance, I know I could make a show of myself, so I'm after shaming myself. But it's only the word. The word is not how would you call it? It's not fully corresponding to what I'm saying. But it's a word that we use a lot in the traveller community.
It's a humbling thing, isn't it?
In other words, I'm ashamed of my life, look, I'm after doing that kind of thing.
Do you think that shame or that embarrassment would hold you back or hold travelling people back?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. From a lot of stuff.
So this is in the DNA of your culture.
Now, we might have that in the settled community also, but they mightn't use the word shame. They might choose the word like, I'm too embarrassed. Or I'm too shy.
I don't have the confidence.
I don't have the confidence. But you don't generally get them using big words, or long words, sorry.
Yeah, but like if I done a thing here in Ballymun a couple of weeks ago. I'm running a thing called the Ballymun Health and Fitness Festival, and we got together 40 different people, guards, TDs, counsellors, youth workers, teachers, all this type of stuff in a room, and we just asked them loads of questions because we're trying to build a thing called the Ballymun Summit. And one of the bits of feedback we got back from all of them was, in general, we kind of all lack a little bit of confidence. And this is from professional people, and I'm not trying to slag them off. I'm just saying this was their feedback. This is what they were saying. We're not busting out our seams with confidence, although the word that Martin might be using might be different. But just self-belief and that thing where you just go, I'm going to fucking just do this and I don't give a bollocks anyway because it's going to be good for me and it's going to be good for me community.
Yeah.
Again, if you,
it's like tenacity,
I said to you, Richie, there's such a thing there. You want to go have a shot at do whatever it might be. Just say, would you have a go at that, Richie? A bit of karaoke or something. Anything. It could be anything, right? Yeah. It could be, and you say, no, I'm ashamed.
No. Yeah, no, what I would say is like, no.
You might choose a different word.
I'd be embarrassed.
If you were to say to me, no, I'm ashamed. This one I would say to you, look, take the shame out of your mouth and put it in your pocket.
And then
so
you can
now
do
you're
it.
saying, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'd say to you, look, take the embarrassment out of your mouth and put it in your pocket.
I get it, yeah.
So it can be used in different terms. But it's just the fact that I use that word, and many people around me would use the same word. Yeah. It doesn't mean we're actually ashamed. Like, shame is a big word, we know that, and again can be used for lots of various reasons.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah,
do you think the embarrassment thing
word,
or the lack of confidence thing, for example, do you think that that's throughout traveller culture, or is that just something that we're thinking or picking up on?
The lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest about it, there is a lot of lack of confidence in travellers, but I think we have it in all walks of life, do we not?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
so.
Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. I don't think confidence would represent.
I think even in an Irish context, like I would see Irish people as having. Terry McManus talked about this. I brought his name up earlier on about malignant shame in Ireland and an inferiority complex, and with that becomes a lack of confidence and a bit of shame. And that's a throwback to our history being colonised by the British for bleeding a couple of 100 years. You know what I mean?
I've experienced the reverse of that as well, which it's not exactly the reverse, but I've seen people say Irish people go to America and do incredibly well, right? And the reason why is because they know how to think outside the box. So you have the American crew, this is when we're filming, the guide specialises in doing this thing, okay? And it breaks on the day. Now we're all stuck, right? He just goes into shutdown, can't figure it out. That's it. It's not working, right? An Irish person in that situation go, right, take the camera off, give it to me. I'm going to fucking put it in a pram and I'm going to push it. And they think outside the box. So when they hit a rock in a river, they go around it. And I find that Irish people have that kind of quality to how they look at life.
Yeah,
a little
and
bit
Martin
as
has
well.
that quality.
Yeah,
Martin has that. I remember a couple of months ago, I was going away on a holiday with my girlfriend up to Achill Island, and I was putting oil in the car, and then I left the oil cap somewhere. I don't know where it was. And on the morning, I was heading off, and the car started to smoke, and I was panicking. And I rang him, going, "What do you do when you lose the oil cap of the car?" And he started thinking outside the box. He said, "Walk up to the car, pop the bonnet, stand in front of it, put your hands exactly where they would have been when you took the oil off. Yeah, close your eyes, reach down." And put your hand on the oil cap. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And I done it, and I'm getting shivers now talking about it. I was panicking, I was sweating. I was like going into lockdown because I had all these plans in my head. I'm going to do this, and I closed my eyes and I put my hand down, and the oil cap was right there.
Brilliant.
There's something in that. There's some magic in that. There's some belief or confidence or understanding about how things work.
I think that was very simple. I think because for me, it was called using the imagination.
Yeah, well, using the imagination isn't simple.
Well, when you're in a panic situation, you tend to not come up with these things as quickly as someone standing outside to go, you know.
Yeah. Someone's there to.
There is that
there,
aspect.
I was looking at it through all these expectations and fears, and I'm at to telling my girlfriend we're going off here, and he was calm as anything, and he just took me through step by step by step, which is a really nice thing to have. I do that for other people, but I couldn't do it in that moment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what you were saying. In America, people know one job and that's it. But if you ask them to go left or right of that, the shit hits the fan.
Well, they're outside their comfort zone. They're not happy about it.
I guess that's why different people have different professions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like what you're doing with that computer there now and sorting out all the bits and bobs there. I can't do that.
Not
So,
can I.
If I look at a computer, I'm going to ring Dean. He'd tell me, close your eyes, put your hands up the button.
Exactly, yeah, very good. But if I look at
Hit delete.
if I look at a transit van and you know what I mean? I don't know what I'm looking at, but when you look at a transit van, we went looking for caravans or trans vans to convert a couple of months ago. I had it in my head, you know, during lockdown, I'm going to get a caravan and that'll be me sorted. I'll be able to travel all over Ireland and so on. So he asked Martin for his help, and when I was ringing up places, he'd have all the questions. He'd have it all lined up in his head. Ask him this, ask him that. When we went to meet him up at IKEA, me and Martin would go up with one of his sons, and he'd be checking underneath stuff for little oils or little, you know, bumpers that aren't aligned and all that. I'd be looking at the colour and the mileage.
Yeah.
Basics.
You're the big girl's blouse.
I resemble that remark.
You do?
You prick.
Dean, you were saying earlier on
I love that word, you prick.
about travellers, about lack of confidence, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think lack of confidence is a representation just of travellers not doing stuff.
Okay.
If it makes any sense.
Yeah, do you think there's another?
No, I think anybody can lack confidence no matter what profession they're in.
Of course, yeah.
I think so.
It's all part
If
of your
you're a
upbringing.
singer, an actor, a producer, director, or a footballer, tennis player, no matter what you might be, if you take on a different role in life, just because you want to take that role doesn't mean you have the confidence. I think somewhere along the line, you have to build up that confidence.
There's also a thing of like, I think, care. If you don't care what other people think, you have a brass neck on you. You'll go out and you'll do anything. You can make a show of yourself in front of thousands of people,
and you don't care about that.
And you don't give a bollocks. Like, so
it's very rare though to get people like that, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I think it's actually a good way to do it because now sometimes people might dive into the deep end and get themselves in trouble over it. But at the same time, if they can do it and just get everything working, rolling the way they want it, sure, it gives them a good sense of freedom then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're doing something that you like without thinking about what anyone else thinks. As long as we're not breaking the law, everything is good.
I think what might have happened, if we're just talking about travellers and confidence or shame and all that, is that I know from my mates, they mightn't have had all the options and opportunities that were available to other people. And in that way, they would have lacked belief in themselves, you know what I mean? Because they wouldn't have been exposed to trying out 20 different things, or they wouldn't have known solicitors or doctors or directors like you know? So they'd limit themselves to manual labour or factory jobs or electricians or...
But I think, like, just my knowledge of growing up and stuff, that, you know, I didn't go to university, and I had a lot of mates who did, and one or two of them came out and did really well. Other ones came out and just went off in an entirely different direction. Other ones basically ended up probably not really using those years, those kind of early formative years of adulthood to forge a career. There was multiple versions of what people did, and it's really down to the person themselves. They're uniquely their character and how they are. You know, some dropped out, some went on to become doctors, some didn't. You know?
Yeah, and whether or not you can afford to follow your inclination or your intuition. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Sometimes poverty tells you can't go off and be that poet you want to be or be that artist. You need to, you know, go into that factory and work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Correct.
That's just the bottom line of it.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So I was saying that confidence is not a built-in thing, is it? Did you ever watch interviews about, again, I'm going back to sort of the same thing. You watch interviews about singers there and actors there on the TV, yeah? And they'd say every time they go on stage, they're nervous. So, isn't that still something like we're talking professionals, right? That do this job every single day. And yet, when they go on stage or go for an interview or go on a television show where they're going to be sort of interviewed, yeah? They still lack that confidence all the time, don't they? Even if it's nervous, they'll tell you it's nervous, but
Well, I think there's certain professions, right, where you can have all the paperwork done, all the research done, you can locked it all down, and some people deliver at that line, and then some people in the creative world, they at a certain point now you just go live and you just have to deal with it on the fly, a bit like we're doing this now. We're live, so to speak, right? So we're not winging it. We're not winging it, but we are. But like we have enough experience to know, okay, we do this or do that. And I talked to a director pal of mine just earlier today, and we were just talking about that, going, the night before the first day of a shoot, I can't sleep, right? Because even though I've done it a million times, like I'm going through all the process going, I've got to do this. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Got to get to sleep, and you nerves, you just, and I actually believe that if the day comes when that doesn't happen to me, I need to walk away and do something else.
Is the nerves?
I like that edge.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier on. Is the nerves anything to do with confidence?
No, well.
Oh, like where does the nervousness come from? Think about it.
It's for me. It's kind of like what you were saying about leaning into fears. You know what I mean?
Because it's live. It's going to be live.
Yeah.
So you got to deal with it on the spot. When
Right.
And there's many things can go wrong. And a lot of times when you're directing on the floor, at that point you're just troubleshooting. You're not troubleshooting, problem solving. Someone comes to you and goes, "Oh, the actor's got sick, or that this has happened, or that, or we can't shoot in that location. What are we going to do?" And you've got to make a decision on the spot.
One thing, you're thinking a million things, basically.
All the time, they're coming at you all the time, and you're sort of problem solving a lot on the day. So everybody through pre-productions prepping to try and get it exactly right. Not everything works, and you can't allow for the fact that someone's car broke down, they didn't make it to set, or their kid got sick, or and so suddenly you're dealing with it's not working, the plan's not working, and they come to you and go, right, you can't have.
That's an interesting one. The plan's not working. What do we do?
Yeah.
Fight, fly, freeze, forget about it, or fix the fucking thing.
Yeah, and experience obviously helps.
Yeah, experience helps. Confidence would also help. So I remember, me ma and me ga teacher would have instilled a sense of confidence in me to go, you can go and do anything you want.
Yeah, Richie, as I was saying, at what stage did you come in contact with you two, and how did you come in contact with them?
So I was making music videos for local Irish bands. One of them was called the Golden Horde. I'd done a few with them, and we'd done a lot of photography together, and they were a really cool band. And I think U2 were at that point where they were changing their whole image from more of the early Joshua Tree style albums, and Unforgettable Fire, to Octum Baby. It was more kind of rock and roll, and there was more of a punk aesthetic in it, and they saw that video, one of the videos I did, and went, we want to work with that. So they got in touch, and we started talking, bantering back and forward. I got involved. I gave them loads of ideas, and eventually we fell upon an idea which became The Fly. And so then I did The Fly, and then that started a relationship with them, where every so often they'd come back. I might just, my sort of style might just fit something they were sort of doing. So they would go, okay, let's sort of Richie about that.
So do you know when you're doing a music video, with likes of U2 or whatever bands you have worked with, will they, are you just videoing this? Are you telling them how to go about it, or are they telling you how to go about it?
I mean, there's lots of discussion beforehand, and you write a treatment. So the treatment is an idea. So they might put out like all bands really, in a way, they'll send the song to various directors and say, we're looking for an idea. In the 90s, there was a lot of pressure on the directors to do performance-based videos because the record company wanted the band. The band is the product, so they wanted the band in the video.
Right.
A couple of brave bands would break that rule, but that was kind of a pressure that would come a lot, right? And so performance videos became a sort of a term. So I'd come up with an idea. If they liked it, we'd talk it out, make sure we're all on the same page, and then at that point they just go, right, go. And then we go into production. Next time I see them is sort of wardrobe check before we go and shoot them. And then once we're on set and we're shooting or on location or whatever it is, they pretty much have the whole idea already in their head and they just take direction. They're very experienced. It's the minute they see what the setup is, they know what we're doing.
Very good.
So you just work away like that.
It was actually a great experience then also.
It's a lot of pressure because they're a big band. That particular band are a big band, so they expect
They want good, don't
it
they?
to be good. And also,
Well, I suppose that's quite successful, like, isn't it?
and also like particularly with you two, of all the bands I've worked with, they're always pushing the boundary. Like every single album I've been involved in working on, I witnessed them really pushing it. They don't fall back on the laurels. They've never done a greatest hits. They're not that kind of band. Every album is like the first album for them.
They want to be better and better all the time. Like.
Yeah, and they're always interested in new ideas and new angles on things. And so their expectations are high and they creatively. And sometimes they push it too far and sometimes they create amazing stuff. And so the length of time they've been together, I think they're kind of remarkable that way.
Very good.
Well,
it proves that the time that they are together proves it all, doesn't it? Like,
look how many different shows they've done and how many different albums and the songs. It's
if not the most famous group in the world, they're one of them, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
There's no lack of confidence with them boys.
And the film that you done, Richie, the Siege of Jadotville, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, did you? I actually watched that film. It was a brilliant film. You done a great job on it. Did you ever get involved in any other films, even just the shooting or say the video in parts or like
no
directing? As a fellow said, a fly on the wall kind of thing.
There was a sort of like a stepping stone where I used to do for the networks, like Showtime, for example. I would do the promos for the show. So say the Borgias, I'd come in and I'd have to make these 3, 4, maybe 5 minute long pieces that were written specifically to promote the show, and I'd have to work with the actors. So that was kind of an interesting crossover because it meant I got to work with, proper actors, mainstream actors.
The Siege was your first film.
First film, yeah.
So what was that like in terms of nerves, confidence, skills, leaning into that? Like,
I mean, I tried so many times to make a movie before that I directed for so long that I was just busting at the chops to get in and do it. It still is a learning experience. It's a 120-minute story, not a 3-minute or a 2-minute or 30-second story. Yes. So it's a different craft. But I loved it and I learned a lot. And I had a great producer. I mean, what's interesting as a director or a producer even of that particular story is it kind of transcended ego. A lot of times in movies, you've got a lot of egos, a lot of cockfighting going on, right? And the story of those men was more important that was told properly than any one person. It was more important than the actor, than the director, than the producer, more important than anybody. Yes. So I had that great kind of like umbrella over the whole thing. It was like, no, sorry, you can't throw your toys out of the pram because we need this to be done right. It's more important than you. Sorry, mate. And that actually was very interesting. It gave it a kind of almost like Zen-like approach then came to the making of it. And you always fell back to what's the best thing here for the story. Yeah.
So was it actually your own ideas to start this whole thing off then? Just for making
I
this film
found the story, yeah. What happened was Declan Power had written a book on it a couple of years earlier, had come and gone, and I was reading a book called Guns for Hire, which was about the history of the mercenary soldier. It started with the Pinkertons in Glasgow and went right through to modern day Yemen. And right in the middle of this book, it's all about mercenary soldiers. So you get to kind of know them and their history. Right in the middle of all this, there was just a paragraph in the book where these really badass mercenary soldiers ran into a company of Irish soldiers and got their arses kicked. And I was like, and it was over. Then they moved on. And I was like, well, I don't know. I never heard of this. What is this? This is kind of huge, right? So I started asking around and here back home, And I was told by the army, by the government, oh, we don't talk about Jadotville. So now I was completely hooked.
You were more
And
interested.
so then I found the soldiers that were still alive, because they were all quite old, and started basically the same journey you would go on if you were making a documentary, interviewing all these people, piecing this story together, talking to Declan, optioning his book, going to the Irish Film Board, getting money to hire a writer to write a script. And basically over 4 years, I went on this journey until eventually we had a version of the script where Alan Maloney came along and went, okay, I know how to make this movie. Let's go.
Very good.
There is an interesting story behind in Jadotville that I can share with you. I was halfway through working on the script in LA, and phone rings, and I pick it up and I go, hello, is this Richie Smyth? And I said, yeah. He said, this is Leo Quinlan. I believe you're making a movie about my father. And I was like, oh, fuck. This is... And I was like, yeah. And I thought, I'm in trouble here, right? And he goes, no, he could tell from my tone. Yeah. He says, no, it's fine. I'm here to help. And I was like, oh, this is gold. Like, can't believe this. He says, why? He invited me back to Waterville, to where Pat Quinlan was from. And now he has a house. And so I went back and went down to Waterville. We had dinner and a bottle of wine. And after dinner, he pulled out his father's chest, big metal box. And he opened it up. He says, I've got something for you, right? And I said, okay. And he pulled out revolvers and schematics and various stuff that his father had collected from when he was in Congo and put in this. He says, no, that's not what I'm here to show you. I want to show you something else. I have the radio log. Okay, so the sidebar to this is what happened was when Quinlan and his men were put under house arrest, he had a radio log which he had kept of the entire battle. His communications, Os Gaeilge, to HQ, because he thought something's going on. They're not responding in military terms to me here. We're in a big trouble here. We're in serious trouble, and I'm not getting back military type responses. So he told the radio up to make a log. All of that log would have been Os Gaeilge and Munster 60s Gaeilge at that, right? So he had this 18-page log, so he gave it to a journalist, and he said, this is a love letter from my wife, will you please see that she gets it? And the journalist said, yeah. But Conor Cruise O'Brien and one of the members of the military intercepted the journalist and took the log and destroyed it. What? So no one ever saw the log. But Quinlan had made a miniature copy, bit like in Tarantino's True Romance with the wristwatch, right? Yes. Same kind of story. He made this. He made a miniature copy which he hid on his body, and so. But when he got back to Ireland and all the shame of it that came with them being called cowards, he decided he didn't want to bring the army in any more disrepute than they'd already been in, because the army was his family, was his life, and he didn't. So he put the log into the box with everything else, and no one ever saw it. So on this particular night in Waterville, probably around 2014, he gave me the log, and he said, "This is yours. It's time that things were made right," is what he said.
This is your first movie, and this dude is handing you, the perfect thing for the movie.
Yeah,
it's just like this log that nobody knows anything about.
I mean, the truth is, it doesn't make it into the movie for a load of reasons that maybe it's another chat, but
it's one of those magic things that can happen in movies.
Yeah, I found someone who could translate it, and it was damning what was written in you know.
And did it give you an insight into it?
Yeah. Oh,
so it would have informed you during the filming process.
And we shot it. We shot with the lead actor Jamie Dornan and one or other the radio up Conor McNeil had to learn all the Irish.
So all this is filmed.
We shot it. Yeah.
But it's on the floor.
It's on the floor, that classic term, but it's on the floor for good reason, because it was getting too confusing. And by the time the second act kicks in and the soldiers are being attacked, your empathy at that point is for them and how are they going to survive it. When we cut away to the politics, it just kind of lost all its momentum. Once the battle kicks off, it really becomes about the battle, because it's such a big thing.
Just give us a small rundown, Richie, on what the film is about, please. I know you're telling a big lot about that here. It was about...
The Siege of Jadotville takes place in 1961, September 61, over 5 days. During the Congo crisis, Patrice Lumumba had been assassinated, and the country had descended into civil war. Meanwhile, the Belgians through a company called Union Minier, were siphoning all the minerals out of the Congo. The UN had decided to take an opportunity here since they'd been formed in 1949. They decided this is an opportunity for us to make a stamp in this world and show we're going to police wars. That was their agenda, through a man called Dag Hammarskjöld. Dag Hammarskjöld sent Conor Cruise O'Brien to be his envoy on the ground.
It's the Irish.
Yeah, this is an Irish connection, but the Irish were going there anyway as UN soldiers.
Yes.
And so Conor Cruise O'Brien sent a company of 300 Irish soldiers into a town called Jadotville to guard it.
From Dublin here, yeah.
To basically protect the locals from civil uprisings and
But did the
Civil
soldiers
War.
come from Dublin over to there, yeah?
Well, not so much Dublin as around the country, Mullingar, Athlone.
Well,
They were- and a lot of them were only kids.
All Irish soldiers, yes.
So Irish soldiers.
They went over there, yeah.
And some of them pretended they were older than they were to get into the army.
Right.
So some of them were only 16. They'd never been out of the country. They were wearing woolen suits. It was a bit Irish, you know. They went over there, and the Irish were in there for the whole of the Congo crisis for the UN.
Right.
Just this incident. There was a town called Jadotville where all the minerals were, uranium, cobalt, copper, that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
The Belgians had a couple of thousand mercenary soldiers guarding the mines. Nothing to do with the Civil War, just guarding the mines and protecting their interests, okay?
So did the Irish go over to make peace? Was that what
The
was
Irish
that
went over as
plan?
peacemakers.
Very good,
Yeah,
yes.
so they got, these 300 soldiers got sent with Commandant Pat Quinlan into Jadotville to protect the locals. When they went in there, the mercenary soldiers said, listen, take a hike. We
Yes.
don't need you. We're fine.
Because
Okay.
they were interested in the minerals, as you call
And
it.
they were there. They had a different job. And of course, the Irish said, well, fuck you. Our orders is
You
to
don't tell us what to do.
yeah, right. Our orders is to go here, so we're going here.
Yes.
And within 24 hours, they were surrounded, and there was a big battle, and it went on for 5 days, and they killed the Irish killed about 400 of the mercenary soldiers.
So they had no choice. This is basically...
No, they were.
Although they went to make peace, they had no choice to fight because they were
Yeah.
getting threatened then.
Yeah. That's what happened. So when they finally agreed to a ceasefire, the key to it all was Quinlan got them to build trenches, World War I, World War II style, and the Mercs just didn't know how to deal with that. So the Irish were dug in and couldn't be got out. So eventually, after days and days of radioing for help and getting nothing, he eventually did agree to a ceasefire because they were out of ammunition, they were out of water, they had injured, they were done, and he had to make a choice between loyalty to the army or loyalty to his men, and he chose his men.
Yes.
And so he agreed to a ceasefire. They were put under house arrest and finally shipped back to Ireland, where they were all condemned as cowards. In fact, the Jadotville Jack was a derogatory term for those men.
Yeah.
The Jadotville Jacks, yeah.
But they fought to the last, basically.
They were fighting to the death because they had no choice.
Yes.
And they were abandoned by their hierarchy, you know.
But they were involved. It was like the UN trying to show people, we have your back. We're going to be the, protectors of the world. These young guys going over to the Congo, they hadn't got a clue what was going on. There was Belgian people pulling minerals out left, right, and centre. There was mercenaries on top of that. And then when the Irish lads were back against the wall, they went to radio silence and they couldn't get any support. So there's a kind of inbuilt drama, and these Irish heroes
It's tragic what happened to
just
them.
dig in, build trenches, and fight for their lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's
So were they deserted and left on their own then? It looked like it.
Yeah, I mean, in the radio log, it's actually Quinlan is calling for instructions before 2 p.m. on the day. He said, "Please send instructions. We have wounded. We have no ammunition. We have no choice. Please give instructions by 2 o'clock." And
got no
at
reply.
2 o'clock there was radio silence, and you can see it in the log. And then at around 2:21 or something, there's a communication comes in from HQ. Have you deserted your men? And he just lost the plot with that, because that's the last thing he was going
He
to
wasn't
do.
doing
So
that.
they were setting him up for a fall by even in suggesting that. So it's quite incriminating when you actually read the log. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very few. No, listen. When I say very few people, I kept it very close. I'd never released it to the government or to the army. I kept it, and it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, of course.
You know.
But
So did you feel in control of this film when you were actually making it? Yeah. What I mean, you had no one telling you what to do. You were the director and the producer of all this, like.
The producer would at that point would have been Alan Maloney.
Right.
And I would have been the director. So it's all pre-planned, and we were pretty much the only time we'd really get into any kind of like altercation about what's going on is if I went off piste a little bit. But sometimes you have to do that. Like there's an element of organic process with any directing. But it was under a bond at the time because it was with Netflix. So it was under a bond. So that means financiers were watching everything that you're doing every day.
Oh, right.
And if you miss a shot,
So there still was pressure involved, like.
huge, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Even
couldn't
though
miss.
you were sort of telling these people what to do kind of thing,
It was all mapped
there
out.
was someone still watching you basically over like.
Oh, every day.
So who makes that decision then of not to use certain things, like the footage that was on the cutting room floor of Jamie Doran speaking Os
That
Gaeilge?
would have been a combination of collaboration between me, the editor, and Alan. So the editor was a woman called Alex Mackey.
So you made a film about a fight in the Congo, and now you're looking at making a film about fighting charity.
Another fighter, yeah.
Can you see is there a link there? Did I just make that link? What's going on with you?
No.
Is there
no,
a bit of
I'm
travel
not
in them or what?
trying to imply I like fighting.
You know what I mean? There's a bit of tension there. You like leaning into things, ayahuasca and bleeding, snowboarding and breaking your
Yeah.
body up.
Or
And
is it just that you like to see a good challenge? Is that what it
I
is?
like the challenge. I think,
Yeah.
Martin, I think you have me there. You have me
Come
nailed.
here, I know you're about to go in a few minutes. Could you give us that was the Siege of Jadotville, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Right. Could you give us a small rundown of what it's like living in LA, please? Just a little rundown.
I'm a big sushi fan,
Quick.
so I love sushi, and it's the best sushi. And I have 5 hours driving door to door to go snowboarding.
Yeah.
And I love American cars and Americana, so I've gotten myself a nice American car, and I love driving.
What about the
Right.
roads themselves? Big
Yeah,
wide
the
roads.
roads they're good. They're not like challenging. I mean, you've got to go up into the mountains to get motorcycle racing roads. But I'm a driver. I love driving, and over there's a speed limit of 55, and most places are 65. And the rule is, I'm kind of talking about California because I don't know all the states. But say, for example, in California, it's mostly 55 or 65. So basically, once you go more than 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, you can get a ticket.
Right.
So if it's a 55 mile an hour speed limit on the motorway or the highway, everybody's sitting at 70. If you go over 70, you go to 71, you're going to get a ticket.
Right.
So everybody sits at 70. It's sort of like a pseudo speed limit,
So
right?
just know they can't
And
do
so
it.
there's none of this like the outside lane is the fast lane and you pull in and overtake and pull in. They all just sit there. So
All the
you'll be
lanes are the same,
So if
basically.
I come racing down the motorway at high speed, I run into this pack of fucking cars and I've got to weave through them to get out of them, and they won't get out of the way because they're like
So
they
you're
take
looking
this
for
higher
trouble then,
ground.
basically.
But we're doing the max you can do. So how could
in
you?
every lane, all at once.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
have to weave through the.
There's no slow
out.
lane, fast lane. It's just this
No.
whole block of traffic that's 50 miles long and 10 lanes wide.
Moving
It's
at the
just
same
doing
level.
70.
Yeah, there's
Get
a lot of that.
Get over it.
Yeah, but it's tailgating and weaving is not like you get in trouble for doing it. But I mean, you'll definitely find like on a long distance drive just to sort of cheer yourself or just to keep yourself fucking awake. You'll see some guy comes flying through the pack and take off. You go after him, and then he knows you've gone after him. So the two of you are kind of like way over the speed limit, belting down the middle of nowhere. Then it'll come up on a pack. I might go in front, and he'll watch me weave through. Now I'm taking the risk because I'm leading
going
the
over
pack.
the
I'm
limits,
leading the pack, if you know what I mean. Then I might back off a little bit, and he'll go past. And you can get into kind of fun games like that.
So you're going to have to give all that up when you come to over with us and make this film, Fighting Charity. You're going to have to
Yeah,
just do the back roads of Blade and Ballymun.
that's a whole other level of adrenaline, right?
Where there's no speed limits.
Exactly.
It's interesting. That.
Happy days. Richie, it was lovely having you in.
Thanks a lot.
Zombie Brian.
Thanks for having me.
And
talking
same
to you.
again. Thank you very much, Richard, for joining us here this evening.
And
Thank you, Martin.
we're going to insist that you put Brendan Gleeson in a headlock for us and at
Oh,
least get him into the film or get him onto this Bleeding podcast.
Yeah, it's A be well able for you.
Yeah, he's a good man, right, isn't he? Tough character.
Thanks, lads. Thanks, Richie. Thanks, Martin.
All right, horse.
Episode 13. Over and out. So that's us for this episode, a Traveller and a Countryman podcast. If you like it, let us know, share it around, and we'll see you on the road.